Hey Algebra 2, this is Mr. Szybisty, and tonight we'll talk about Unit B2, which is factoring by grouping. We're going to find a way to take a polynomial that looks like this and turn it into two polynomials that if we multiplied them together, we would get this original polynomial. So I got to teach you the method on how to do this, and it's done by grouping. What we've got to do is a process that I like to call group, 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 group with a plus in the middle. To show you with writing, it's group, 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 group with a plus in the middle. We really need that plus in the middle. Now, here's what we'll do. Out of the first group, I am going to look for a GCF, a greatest common factor. The numbers 3 and 2, now there's nothing that divides into both 3 and 2. But I've got 3 x's here and 2 x's here. This means that I can pull out an x squared on the outside. Now, what's left on the inside? Well, I didn't pull out any numbers, so there's a 3. I originally had 3 x's, and I took 2 out, which means 1's left, then a plus. And now, out of the second term, I didn't do anything with the numbers, and I pulled both x squared out. I pulled both x's out, and so that's it. Now, for the second group. First, we'll look at the numbers. 9 and 6. Oh, I know a number that divides into 9 and 6. That's 3. Are there any variables I can take out? Well, there's just an x right there and no variables over here, so no. The only GCF that I have is 3. Now, let's see what's left on the inside. So 9 divided by 3 is 3, and I didn't pull out any variables, so the x is left. And then plus, and then out of the second term, 6, I pulled out 3, which means 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now, Algebra 2, check this out. Look what's left. In this group, I have 3x plus 2. And in these parentheses, this group over here, I also have 3x plus 2. This is one of my factors. One of the things that multiplies is that factor right there, 3x plus 2. And so I write it right there. The other factor is what's on the outside, x squared plus 3. So I'm going to write that as the other factor, what's outside, x squared plus 3. And so here are my two factors. 3x plus 2 times x squared plus 3. And if you were to multiply these back together, you would get the original polynomial that we had before. That's what we mean by factoring. If you factor, you're undoing a multiplication. And if you were to do the multiplication again, you'll get the polynomial that we originally started with. Let's go on to the next example. First things first, I'm going to rewrite this example so that I can do the grouping. Now you'll notice something interesting. Because in the middle here, it's not a plus. So watch what we do. I still need to group, 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 group with the plus in the middle. So I will group, 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 group with a plus in the middle. That negative sign right here stays inside the group, and I'm going to add a plus on the outside just like this. This happens when the third term is negative, and every now and then that'll happen. Just remember that there needs to be a plus in the middle for this factoring by grouping to work. Now I'll take a look at the two individual groups and see what GCF I can pull out. There's a 5 and there's a 4. So there's no number that divides into both of them. But I have 4 x's and I have 3 x's, which means I can pull x cubed out to the outside. Then what's left? Out of the first term, I didn't do anything with the number, and I still have 1 x left. There were 4 here, I took 3 out, so there's 1 left. Finally, I didn't do anything with the number in the second term, so I keep the 4. And I pulled all of the x's out. All 3 that were there got pulled to the outside. So I'm left with just the 4. Plus, and now it's time for the second group. The third term is negative. Something really interesting happens when the third term is negative. To make factor by grouping work the way that we want it to do, whenever this third term right here is negative, we are going to pull out something that's negative. In this case, the number that divides into -10 and negative 8 is negative 2. Now what's left? Out of the first term, if I took out a negative 2, negative 10 divided by negative 2 is a positive 5. And I didn't take out any variables. There were no variables to take out, so I just have an x. And then out of the second group, negative 8. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4. And take a look at the phenomena that happened again. What's inside the two groups are the same, 5x plus 4. That means that 5x plus 4 is one of my factors. The other factor is what's left on the outside, x cubed and negative 2. So I can write my answer, x cubed and a negative 2, just like that. And so here's my answer. If I were to multiply these two polynomials together, I would get this original polynomial right there. Remember, that's what factoring means. It means undoing the multiplication. Now it's time for our next example. This one looks interesting. Now I'm going to rewrite this again and do the group with a plus in the middle. And notice that the third term is negative still, which means it's of the utmost importance that I have a plus in the middle. So let's do the group with a plus in the middle, just like we would want to do in any of these other exercises. Now, out of the first group, let's take a look. There's a 10 and there's a 6, which means that 2 is part of my GCF. But also notice the variables as well, 3x's and 1x, which means that another part of my GCF is an x. There is a y here, but there's no y with this term over here, which means y cannot be part of my GCF, which means I've got my complete GCF and I'm ready to write what's left. 10 divided by 2 is 5. I originally had 3 x's and I took one out, which means I'm left with x squared. Now out of the second term, negative 6 divided by 2 would leave me with negative 3. And out of the 1x I originally had, I took it out, which means I'm only left with a y. Now it's time for the next group. Negative 25 and a positive 15. What number goes into 25 and 15? Well, that number is 5. But the number I'm going to pull out is not 5. Remember, the third term here is negative, which means that the number I want to pull out is negative. So I'm going to pull out a negative 5. Also now, I've got to look at the variables. I got 2 x's and 2 y's. Over here, I have 3 y's. What's common? Well, these both have 2 y's. 2 y's here, and then there are 2 y's in the y cubed, which means that y squared, 2 y's, are part of the GCF. Now what's left? Well, out of negative 25, I took out negative 5, which means 5's left. I didn't take out any x's, so the x squared remains. And I took out all the y squared. Those are both being pulled out to the outside, so there's no more y's left on the inside. And then a plus out of the second term here. 15 divided by negative 5 is a negative 3. And then I had 3 y's originally. I pulled 2 out, which means 1 is left. And look at the phenomena that happened again. What's inside the group is the same. That's something that tells me I did it right. That's my first factor. 5x squared minus 3y is the first factor. And the second factor is what's left on the outside, 2x minus 5y squared. Now it's time for one more example, now that we've found our answer here. We're going to do one more example, and then it's a you try. In our last example, we get lucky because there's a plus in the middle, which means when I go to group with the plus in the middle, I won't have to worry about there being a negative there in the middle. So we're going to group with the plus in the middle. Out of the first group, I look at the numbers first. I notice a 6 and a 9, which means that, well, a number that divides into both of those would be a 3. Now I look at the variables. X squared and x means that there is one x common between them. And finally, 1y and 3y's means that there is 1y that is common between them. Now what's left? Well, 6 divided by 3 is 2. I originally had 2 x's. I pulled one out, which means one's left. And then out of the 1y that was there, I pulled it out. So no more y's remain inside. Minus, I had a negative 9 divided by 3. Leaves a 3. That x got pulled to the outside. There's no more x left inside. But I had 3 y's and I pulled only one of them out, which means 2 remain inside. Now it's time for the second one. Let's look at the numbers first. 2 and 3. No numbers divide evenly into both 2 and 3. So now let's look at the variables. This one has an x, but the second term doesn't. This one has a y squared, but the first term does not have any y's. There is not a GCF for this entire second group. Well, we've got to pull something out, which means we're going to pull out a 1. Once I pull out that 1, it's as if I didn't pull anything else out of this. Everything would stay the same. And look at the phenomena that happened. What's inside my groups are the exact same. That's my first factor. My second factor is what is on the outside. In this case, 3xy plus 1. So here is my final answer for this question. If I were to multiply these together, I would get the original polynomial that we have up there. Now it's time for a U-try. So now it's a U-try. And this is a group with the plus in the middle. You can tell that because there are 4 terms. And that's how we know it's a group with the plus in the middle, a factor by grouping. And just as a special heads up, notice that third term as a negative, which means you're going to need a plus in the middle. And out of the second group over here, you'll need to pull out something negative. Pause the video and see if you can get this one right. Here's our answer. 6x squared minus 5 is in the first group, and 2x minus 3 is in the second group. Make sure you record your work, and if you got the right answer, see if you can figure out what you did wrong. If not, make sure that you write down that as one of your questions. Write down where you got lost, and we're going to talk about that in class, and we're to talk about how do you do more of these where you want to factor something group with a plus in the middle. Get your questions down. Algebra 2, I'll see you in class on the next day, and we can talk about this factoring by grouping. Have a great night.